Hey everyone, it's Carissa. Welcome to Satur-YAY. We are celebrating the weekend by getting our craft on. And this month I am using some products from Right at Home to create some gorgeous stamp-heavy card projects. I love the Right at Home line. There are so many beautiful kind of whimsical images. I love these sentiments. This is the script greeting stamp set. I'll be using that thank you today. There's some more in there with some sub-sentiments as well. And so it's a really great kind of versatile sentiment stamp set. I'll also be using this watercolor stripe background stamp. It is one of my favorites. The results are just stunning. They look like you've hand watercolored them, but you haven't. And then finally, I'll be using these image stamps. I have the freshly picked on the left and the fluttering by on the right, and there are coordinating dies for both of these stamp sets. I only have the coordinating dies for the fluttering by stamp set, so I will be doing some fussy cutting today. Yes, folks, that's right, some fussy cutting. So in order to use this background rubber foam mount stamp in my MISTI, I have to remove the foam piece from the MISTI, and that allows me to use these clean rubber stamps in the MISTI because they have a little bit of foam pad built into them. So I've removed that and I've placed some Essentials by Ellen linen cardstock into my MISTI, and I'm stamping this background stamp with the Catherine Pooler Meant to Be ink. And I'm going to do several backgrounds because I'm creating 4 cards. You're going to notice that I am not super diligent about making sure these are perfect because it's an imperfect look when you watercolor. So it's really nice that all of these stamps that I'm using today kind of have a really whimsical feel. They're very forgiving. So that I love layering stamps that are forgiving. So as I just mentioned, this is a layering stamp. So I've started with my base image. I am using all Catherine Pooler inks today. And I'm stamping that largest, most solid layer onto some Neenah Solar White cardstock. And then I'm stamping the detail layer on top of it. Now, some of these, I actually use the same exact color of ink. That's going to give you a little bit lower contrast result, but I think it's a really nice tone-on-tone result. So I've sped up the stamping here because I'm doing quite a bit of stamping, and I will have all of the colors that I used in these projects linked over at the coordinating blog post, so be sure to check that out. And for some of these, I'm using a darker color for the accent layers. Some of them I'm doing a tone-on-tone. It all depends. You don't have to have a million different inks to do a layering stamp set. You can layer the same tone on top of itself and create that tone-on-tone look. Now, like I said, it won't be as high contrast, but it still gives you that layered stamping look. Now, you're going to see me fussy cut these images. I'm not going to lie, it's not my favorite thing to do. But in the end, I think it was actually just as time as effective as lining up all of my dies several times and cutting those out. But you'll notice here, I'm holding the image in my left hand and I'm turning the image and I'm keeping my detail scissors still. This gives me the best fussy cutting result that I can possibly get. Once again, these images have a very whimsical feel. They're going to be layered on top of each other, so I am not worried about getting them perfect. And I did leave a little bit of a white border so that they do look like I did use the coordinating dies, even though I didn't. Shh, it's our little secret. So next up, I have kind of the flower wrapper here. I'm stamping that in some Versamark ink onto some craft colored cardstock. And now I am going to stamp this gorgeous banner. Now this banner also has layering pieces. So you're going to see me add those on step by step. So first I stamped the base layer and now I'm doing the 2 side layers. And you're going to notice I'm not changing ink colors. This is all the Catherine Pooler Meant to Be ink. So I've stamped the ends and now I'm going to stamp these little shadow pieces. Now these weren't quite dark enough. There wasn't a big enough difference between the end pieces and these smaller pieces. So I've just stamped them 3 times to darken up that mint ink, and that gave me the contrast that I needed. So once I have all of my images cut out, I'm kind of just laying them out, seeing how I want them. All of these I'm going to use on this one project, so I'm just setting them in a bowl to the side. And now I'm going to work on my greeting. Now I'm using the Catherine Pooler Midnight ink pad for this, and I love their black ink, but it did need to be re-inked. These kind of gel foam ink pads do need to be re-inked a little more often than your felt ones do. So I'm just taking my re-inker and I'm kind of squeezing out a little bit of ink and working it into the pad with the tip of the nozzle. And then I have my ink pad all nice and juicy to stamp my sentiment. So this sentiment actually comes as one long sentiment, and I, a couple months ago, cut this apart to use it separately so that I could stack it just like this. So I'm kind of stamping them one by one, the thank and then the you, so that I could kind of nestle them into each other. And I did that on 2 of my backgrounds, by the way, so that I have it ready for my next cards. And now I'm going to start assembling all of my pieces. So some of these pieces I'll be using tape runner adhesive and some of them I'll be using foam adhesive. But I wanted to mention that when you're putting the foam adhesive on the back of these, so I'm doing them all at once, I'm keeping that foam adhesive kind of towards the center of each of these images so that it's easy for me to nestle other things beneath it, because there's going to be quite a few layers going on here. So you can see I have my little stems coming out of the wrapper there. I'm going to go ahead and place that onto my card front. I have the back part of the wrapper behind those images that I've already placed on the card, so those leaves and that flower. And from there, I'm going to just start building up my scene. Now you're going to see as I go on that I'm placing things down. I'm not like pushing them really hard into place. I'm kind of setting them there and pressing just a little bit. This kind of allows me a little bit of forgiveness to where I can kind of pull things up and tuck things behind. I find it easier to kind of do this and build it up by kind of tucking and adding than I do trying to just kind of make it on the side and then adhere it all the way I had it before. I don't know. Does that make any sense at all? But by keeping the adhesive in the middle of those images, I can be sure that I have the ability to kind of pull them up and tuck them behind. Now I finished off the flower wrapper with a little bit of white pigment ink and some of the berries that were actually in that stamp set. And now I'm going to take the rest of my images that I stamped and fussy cut and I'm going to create a second card. Now I have my background already stamped and I know that my banner is going to go on top. So what I've done is just stamped that banner where I want it, and this is going to allow me to build the scene around the banner so I can see where everything's going to kind of come out when I put that banner on top. So this is just kind of a guide for me. And just like I did before, I put the foam adhesive in the center of my images. I'm using a mixture of tape runner and foam adhesive, and I'm just kind of lifting and tucking and pressing and kind of arranging this as I go along. And once I have my floral arrangement the way I want it, I am going to add this into my mini Misty, and I'm going to stamp this sentiment as one long line. So even though I've cut it apart previously, I'm going to connect it back together just like it was originally designed, and I'm going to stamp it on the bottom of this card front here. Now, once again, I'm using the Catherine Pooler Midnight ink for this. It's a nice, rich black ink. It's also Copic friendly once it's dry, so keep that in mind, and permanent, so you can watercolor with it. And then I decided I wanted to add a sentiment to the banner. Now, my family was rushing me. They wanted to watch a movie, Ocean's 11. And I stamped a sentiment here, and my sentiment made 0 sense. It said, "So very thank you." So that's what happens when you rush. Haste makes waste. It's okay. I just created another banner. I stamped something that actually made sense this time, and I adhered it right on top of that other banner, and nobody knows. So now that I have those couple of cards completed, I'm going to work on some cards featuring this fluttering by stamp set. Now I have the coordinating dies for this stamp set, and normally I would stamp and then die cut. I'm going to do it the opposite this time because I don't want to space out my layers too much and then the die not fit around it. So I've gone ahead and just die cut these out of some Nina Solar White. I'm showing you all the pieces, like the zones that kind of connect, that are all meant to kind of work together there. They're kind of grouped in zones, so that you can easily find all of the images that work with each of these fireflies or butterflies or moths or whatever, flying creatures. And I'm going to just use several of these layers in different colors. I'm not going to show you all the stamping this time because it is kind of monotonous, But some of them I used all the layers, some of them I used just a couple layers, and I'm just varying the colors as I go throughout my stamping. So I have a nice kind of mix of colors, just like I did with all those floral images that I created earlier. Now I thought it would be fun to kind of have a little bit of greenery coming out from behind these flying creatures, because I wanted them to feel like they were kind of in a garden scene. So I've just tucked a couple of those kind of leafy images behind or on the base of my card, and I'm going to add my little flying creatures over the top. And I actually had an extra flower too, so I added that to this card as well. And all of those little fireflies are going on with foam adhesive. So on all of these cards, I have varying depths and dimensions because I'm using a combination of foam adhesive along with tape runner adhesive, and that gives your card a lot of interest as well. So here's my two little firefly cards here, and here are all of the card fronts that I created. I decided they needed a little shimmer, a little bit of shine, a little bit of gold glitter, so I'm using some stickles and just adding some little dot details to all of these card fronts. This was probably not the smartest order. It all turned out okay, but do this at the end, okay? Because I hadn't put these on card bases yet. These card bases are made out of Neenah Solar White 110-pound cardstock. So I just added my tape runner adhesive to the card base and then added all of the card fronts onto those bases. And now I have 4 beautiful card projects featuring some awesome stamps from Right at Home. I love this mix of kind of whimsical images and those gorgeous sentiments. I wish I could write like that. I cannot. I cannot even come close. But as long as I have stamps that kind of mimic that look that I actually wrote it, then I think I'll live. I also really love the color palette on these projects. It's got those bold and bright colors mixed with the soft and subtle colors and a touch of gold, which, if I do say so myself, is awesome. As always, I will have links to the featured supplies used in these products in the description at YouTube, but head on over to the coordinating blog post because I'll have links to all the products I use there, as well as more still shots and more information. Thanks for stopping by today. I hope you enjoyed these projects. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our paper crafting and card making video tutorials. As always, I'm so glad you've come by and hung out with me today. Thanks for watching. Happy Satur-YAY, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end. You know, if you've made it this far, you are my favorite. If you want to subscribe to our channel, go ahead and click that button on the left side of the screen. And here's a couple more video tutorials I thought you might enjoy.